meeting of the Mobile City Planning Commission. I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or group application on the agenda will be called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members can ask questions, if any, and members of the public will make their comments. A reminder that only 4 people may speak for an agenda item and 4 people against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, you'll hear a loud beep that will indicate you have 1 minute left to speak, and at that time, we'd ask that you summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond to any opposition. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium at the bottom of the steps, speak into the microphone clearly, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience, and please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications in the public hearing session, the commission will go into the deliberation session. The commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no further input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application, and the results of the voting will be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, we have the discretion to allow other comments pertaining to those issues and resolve them, or call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, one or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing voting on a given application. That does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved in the application or the applicant, and simply depending on the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there's only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments, or PUDs. It's a reminder that the Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decisions. This time, please turn off all cell phones or turn them to silent. And commissioners and staff, remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. I'll call the roll. Myself, Jay Stubbs, present. Mr. Alan Cameron. Ms. Jennifer Denson. Mr. Carlos Gant.
Present.
Ms. Shirley Sessions.
Here.
Mr. Taylor Atchison. Mr. Matt Anderson. Mr. Nick Amberger.
Here.
Mr. Scott Jones. Ms. Susan Carley. Mr. Kirk Matei. We do have a quorum for today's agenda. Each commissioner has that agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adopt it. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move on to the agenda with the public hearing session, starting with holdovers from the previous meetings. Number 1, 254 and 256 State Street. Previous meeting with the approval of the Mobile Historic Development Commission. It's been recommended for tentative approval with 12 conditions. Any further comments from staff on this item?
Couple of things. One, the Properties Committee of the MHDC did approve the lot line adjustment based on the easement that they hold on the properties. Additionally, in the engineering comments, letter N needs to be revised to delete the portion regarding if the applicant submits a copy of an approved Mobile County site plan for the improvement shown on the plat, then historical credit may be approved by the city engineer. That comment needs to be deleted. Engineering has submitted that, but we did not incorporate that into the staff report. The other item is that condition number 1 is moot because the surveyor has submitted to document that State Street currently has 50 feet of right-of-way, so no dedication is required.
Given those changes on number 1 and then 8N, is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with all of the conditions?
The surveyor has submitted documentation that illustrates State Street has adequate right-of-way, so no dedication is required. You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 1?
That particular item that was just discussed, the dedication, and that is, I mean, it feels like we shouldn't be.
We know who you are, but
I'm sorry.
Name.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth Stevens.
Address.
261 Dolphin Street.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
I'm questioning why we would ask for any right-of-way downtown. I think we have an established street grid. We have an old world city, and what do we need to change in the regulations so that we are not having to ask for right-of-way, that would even come up and we would have to be on guard for that. That was my question.
In general, illustrating the amount of right-of-way for any street frontage is a requirement of the subdivision regulations. While the standard street right-of-way width is 50 feet, while I'm not sure that there's any location in downtown that is less than that, still it's a minimum requirement of the subdivision regulations. And if there is not a compliant right-of-way, regardless of where it's located, then the commission, as part of their action on the application, would need to waive that section of the subdivision regulations.
And which section is it so I can read that? I'm not questioning you. I just
We'll email you
Okay.
the subdivision regulation reference.
Okay. I mean, I've got them here. I just didn't see it. Just which item? Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 1? Is there anyone here to speak against agenda item number 1? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 2. 355 North Ann Street. It's been recommended for approval with 2 findings of fact and 7 conditions. Is the applicant present? 3 of you? Y'all in agreement with number 2 and the conditions and the findings of fact? Any comments from staff on agenda item 2? Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item 2? Is there anyone here to speak against agenda item 2? We will move on to number 3. (4119, 4161, 4173, and 4175 Halls Mill Road. We have a subdivision and a rezone. The subdivision has been recommended for tentative approval, subject to 7 conditions, and a rezone with recommendations that the commission consider recommending to the city council it be rezoned to I-1 light industry. Any further comments from staff on this agenda item?
We received an email from the applicant's agent, and they are agreeable to the recommendation to I-1 zoning, and I believe they are also agreeable to the recommended conditions.
Is that in lieu of them being here in person?
We're still on number 3, correct?
Yes.
He's here.
Okay. Applicant's present. In agreement with everything? Is there anyone here to speak for agenda item number 3? Is there anyone here to speak against agenda item number 3? Seeing none, we'll move on to new subdivision applications. Number 4 on the agenda, 2600 Fairway Drive, recommended for tentative approval with 9 conditions. Is the applicant present? No applicant present that I can see. Oh, way up there in. The applicant is present, and you're in agreement with the 9 conditions with tentative approval for 2600 Fairway Drive. Anyone here to speak for agenda item number 4? Is there anyone here to speak against agenda item number 4? Seeing none, we'll move on. Continuing in new subdivision applications, number 5, north side of Abigail Drive at its east terminus. Recommended for tentative approval, subject to 10 conditions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
The applicant has provided a enlarged plan which illustrates that the site technically does not have access to this road here. There is, as you can barely see, there is a 5-foot buffer strip located here. It is on the recorded plat, so there is no access from this site to that street. So condition number 4 should be deleted.
Comment from staff to the commissioners on number 4 on agenda item 5 for deletion. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement, Mr. Byrd? Is anyone else here to speak for this agenda item? Is anyone else here to speak against this agenda item? All right. Moving on to agenda item 6. 1017 Smith Avenue. Recommended for tentative approval, subject to 7 conditions. And I do see that, Commissioners, reminder, we have some notes on this agenda item at your desk. Any further comments from staff on this item? Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the recommendation and conditions? Is there anyone else here to speak for number 6? Anyone here to speak against number 6? Anyone else speaking against number 6? All right. Moving on. Under new planned unit development applications, PUDs, number 7, 186 Stanton Road. It's been recommended for approval with 5 findings of fact for the PUD and an approval subject to 11 conditions. I'd like to remind commissioners that you also have comments at your desk on this agenda item as well. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with all of the conditions and findings of fact? Anyone else here to speak for agenda item 7 at Stanton Road, PUD? Is there anyone here to speak against number 7? Would you like to come on down and make comments?
Mr. Chairman, as he is making his way down, I just want to note for the record that Ms. Sessions is recusing.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I am Mike Horton. I'm at 1805 Indian Creek Drive, which is the Linwood subdivision that is part of us are against this. I mean, part of us are butted up to this property. I'm also the president of the association. In 2 or 3 meetings that we've had with the neighborhood, there were some concerns that were brought up. We have read over the different documents that were sent out, including the different studies that were going to be done. And I compiled a list here of just neighborhood concerns because we are it's a 55-unit homeowners association. The first one is a traffic study has not been completed on the project. Traffic on Stanton will back up several times a day past the proposed entrance to this particular property. And what happens in a lot of cases, even pulling out, what's going to happen is if it's backed up, people are going to turn right onto Oak Knoll, onto Stanton, and turn directly back into our neighborhood, which is it's a major cut through right now for USA because of the just being able to miss the stoplights on Spring Hill. The next concern is from what is proposed from the plan, and we've actually seen two different plans of this. This is the second. It doesn't appear to be that there is adequate room for vehicles such as fire trucks, ambulances, delivery, or garbage trucks to back up or to pull into the property. The third is the parking spaces in that particular plan do not appear to be, they just appear to be too short. A typical pickup truck is 22 feet. You also have larger SUVs that will appear to hang out into the specific sidewalks in the area. Another thing that I noticed, there's not a mail kiosk on this particular plan or parking for it. With it being a gated community, a mail service will not come into the property to deliver mail. Two versions of the plan are shown. This is the second one. One of our concerns, because there are 4 residents who butt up directly up to the property, there's only one dumpster on the project that's shown. And my question is, on the second plan, you can see where it's drawn in with an arrow. It says dumpster. We would like to know where the location of these dumpsters are, especially being so close to the property, just for the noise and the odor issue. But as it shows on this plan, there are 2, but the second dumpster where it's drawn in, there's no way it can sit in the roadway. On the property, there are several healthy trees. There's about 4 or 5 large oak trees that appear to be at least a 24-inch diameter. And of course, these are not shown on this PUD plan. Is there anything that we're doing to try and preserve the trees on the neighborhood? And I know that we're still waiting on a tree survey. And of course, if the trees are left because of the way the property is laid out, it's going to drastically change what you're looking at in this proposal. There is a 10-foot setback that is around the property. And our major concern is on the area that abuts the Linwood neighborhood. Is there going to be any type of buffer shown, such as trees or, let's see, the other thing. And the other big question was dark sky lighting. We have no shown plan on what type of parking lot lighting is going to be in this particular area. We also have no architectural designs on this property, so we really don't know what these are going to look like. I can see in the plan here, there's no patios, there's no window elements put in. Let's see, on the southwest corner of Stanton Road and Oak Knoll, there is a 5-foot retaining wall that is on the Stanton Road side. With the trees and the shrubbery removed on the Stanton Road side, what is going to be put in place to keep the soil from eroding out into the street? And I guess that's it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Horton.
And thank you so much for your time.
Yes, sir. We've heard one speaker in opposition. Is there anyone else here to speak against agenda item 7? Seeing Seeing none, we'll circle back to the applicant to address the concerns that Mr. Horton brought up.
Good afternoon. My name's Charles Tischer with Clark Gear Latham and Associates. I'd like to address some of the comments that we've seen. As far as the traffic study goes, one has not been required by the city at this point, and I don't know, maybe they can speak more to that. I'm not really sure what would trigger something like that. I would assume it would be a certain amount of people in this development, but whatever it was, our development was not enough to trigger us to have to do a traffic study. As far as fire trucks, garbage, we've received no comments from the fire department about the lane widths or any of the drive aisles with them having any problems with access. So we believe that's good to go for right now. As far as the parking spaces go, the city requires an 18-foot long parking space. All of ours are 19-foot long, so we are over code on that. The mail will be in the amenities building, which is kind of right there in the corner. That's the only dumpster location, the one that's showing right now. We're only required one dumpster. It will have sanitary sewer service going to it as well. As far as the oak trees go, we've done an on-site visit with Peter Toller, the city's urban forester. We've identified trees that can be saved, as well as identified some trees that are not healthy. Inclusion, our goal is to save as many trees as we can in this, and we will comply with the city's tree code. Everything will be in compliance there. As far as the setbacks go, the minimum setback is 10 feet. We have, I believe, on the residential parts, we actually have 17 feet is what we have there. And rather than a 6-foot privacy fence, which is the required buffer along those residential sites, those residential properties, we will have an 8-foot privacy fence. As far as the lighting goes, we're not that far into design yet. That's not a requirement at this point in design, but we will be within the city's code on that. We'll have to follow that. That photometric plan will be approved when we file for a land disturbance permit. Kind of same thing with the architectural design. We're just not. As far as the retaining wall goes, we have learned about that. Our goal is to work with right-of-way on that. As far as soil erosion goes there, during construction, there will be silt fence and other erosion control measures to keep the soil from getting out into the street. Upon completion of construction, any area that's bare will have to be sodded. So that will take care of that. Now we've also gotten some questions about the detention pond. It will be a dry detention pond. The goal is to take the water back to Stanton Road. If we can't do it from the pond there, we'll have to store the water in pipes, and there will not be a detention pond in that case. So that's not going to be a water feature. It's going to be dry. It's not going to sit there with water. The depth of it, typically they're 2-3 feet, something like that. I don't have the depth of the outflow structure yet because we're not at that point in design yet. As far as overflow goes, we'll have enough provided that the city requires us in their stormwater policy, with enough detention, and our release rate will be what they require us as well. As far as I know there's a comment about the great horned owls and the trees that are being removed. The nest boxes, that's something that can definitely be discussed with us. I don't think we have a problem with providing something like that. Spoken to traffic. And then as far as the masonry barrier, there's no plans for that at this time. We have an 8-foot privacy fence we're providing. Everything on this plan, as far as the landscaping, parking, everything is to code, and in many cases exceeding code. We only have 26% building coverage, and we're allowed by right 45%. I believe in the staff report it says we could have as much as 107 units on this property, and we only have 44. All to say that we're designing this with the neighborhood in mind and trying to go above and beyond the code to make this a desirable development for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tischer. Staff have any comments on his comments? Everything sounded covered. Moving on to agenda item 8. And again, a reminder, we will be back in the deliberation session on each agenda item. Agenda item 8, new sidewalk waiver application 6480, 6485, 6490, Dockside Drive. It's been recommended for denial of the sidewalk waiver, which means sidewalk would be constructed, or request that sidewalk be constructed. I see the applicant, Mr. Byrd.
Yes, Jerry Byrd, 2609 Halls Mill Road, Mobile. The subdivision that we're located in is all zoned I-2, this being the site that's under consideration. All of the gray is I-2, and this lighter blue is all I-1. Being an industrial classification, there's probably more trucks and trailers that'll be in there than it will be employees that would be using a sidewalk. It's not like they will be there after hours strolling down the sidewalk with their friends and taking their dogs to walk and this kind of thing. The property next door is already developed as truck trailer parking. There's also some across the road. And it just more of a realistic request that it not be constructed because it's really not a need for it. And possibly it would be a danger, I don't know. But with the trucks and trailers coming in on deliveries and or just parking on the site, probably be more of a danger.
Mr. Chairman, do those adjacent properties have sidewalks?
No, they do not.
Okay.
I will, Mr. Anderson, I will let you know that the site just to the south of this location on Dockside that is developed, they did get a sidewalk waiver that was approved. However, it was approved with the condition that at a time a structure was put on the property, that sidewalks would be put in. They are supposed to at some point in the future, yes, but they do not currently.
Do you recall the date of that approval? Is that an
Come back and
educated
ask
guess,
for
Mr.
another
Anderson?
waiver.
Sir?
They'll probably come back and ask for another
Sorry.
waiver.
That was approved at the February 20th, 2014 meeting.
Mr. Jones, microphone. Oh.
There we go. Okay. 2 buttons. What are we going to use the land for here? What's the intent? What's the purpose?
Development of the site.
On the site.
At the very end of the cul-de-sac, well, there's the drawing. It's office warehouse and all of the 3 lots over to the side in that area, lay down yard, equipment storage outside. I guess that would also involve trucks or parking of their trailers too if they come in with it.
All right. And, my question to the staff would be, I remember just a couple of weeks ago near Africa Town, we approved a waiver like this. Seems like it was a similar site. So why did we approve that, and we're recommending denial on this one?
There are some distinguishing factors between this site and the site that was approved a few weeks ago. This street is a closed-in street that is primarily, this is the first development. You have the lay-down yard here, but again, as Mrs. York stated, the commission stipulated that when there is a building constructed here, that the sidewalk will be provided. This street, again, it's undeveloped now. It's a closed-in street, and while it's zoned I-2, it is a low-speed street. So sidewalks, as referenced in the city's complete street policy, they're an amenity, not just for residents, but for people that work at these locations as well. The distinction with the site in Africatown was the level of development and the speed of the street along it was located on. It is a higher speed street. You have long swooping curves. You don't have a 90-degree turn like you do down here at Hamilton Boulevard. And the design of the street in Africatown is such that you have not just large volumes of tractor-trailer traffic, you have them at a higher rate of speed than what you're going to see on Dockside Drive.
Any further questions or comments from commissioners? Is there anyone else here right now to speak on agenda item sidewalk waiver of agenda item 8? Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Moving on, under group applications, agenda item 9, east side of North University Boulevard and the east terminus of Lebaron Drive South. We have an application for subdivision, Sandalwood subdivision, recommended for tentative approval, subject to 8 conditions. And then we have a rezone that's recommended for denial with 4 reasons stated. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with, we'll take these separately, are you in agreement with the subdivision tentative approval and the 8 conditions? Regarding the rezone and denial recommendation, are you in agreement with that? Please come on down.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the reason I don't
Name, sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Name and address.
Chandretta Porter,
Yes, thank you, Ms. Porter.
5810 Monica Drive, Sims, or 8 Mile if they want to fight over it, Alabama, a zip code 36613.
Comments towards the denial of the rezone.
Yeah. The comments that they have, I do have a specific use for the property. I thought that I told them that, but nevertheless, I do have a specific use for the property. No site plan was provided because I was told that it was that one that was to be required at this particular time. And it's being evolved as we speak anyway. But, I mean, what is it that do you want to know what it's going to be used for, or?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
I'm going to defer to staff here, but on the denial reasons, the 2 you just mentioned, no site plan or specific use
Right.
Sent in. And I think number 4 would be the comment here from staff, which is approval of a B3 with surrounding R1 would create a spot zone situation. So I'll turn it over to staff for their comments.
Okay. A few things. I think there may have been some conversation, but when staff is analyzing an application and creating the report for the recommendation, we can only go based on the narrative and the documentation submitted.
Okay.
Anything else could be considered hearsay. So if the commission is looking for additional information, we would need a proposed use and a scope of use so that we can ensure that the zoning classification that you're requesting will allow the proposed use. The other thing that is very important is there are 4 reasons, and they're laid out in the staff report when the commission is supposed to utilize in analyzing a rezoning application. Is there error, an increased need for business sites, subdivision of land, making the rezoning necessary? We need to, for the applicant to list those reasons. The site itself at for B3, it falls below the minimum recommended acreage, which is 4 acres. Is the recommended acreage. The site is below that, I believe.
It's almost 9.
It's almost 9. I'm sorry, I saw 3 again. So you have the size, but you are going to be surrounded by R1 zoning. But to further analyze this application, we do need a use, preferably with a scope to make sure all aspects of the proposal do comply with B3 zoning. We do need to know which one of the reasons or reasons justifies the rezoning. And then we can put that forward to the commission. Also, it is preferable if a site plan is submitted, because that also ensures that what you're proposing can fit within the constraints of the property.
Absolutely, I have no problem doing that if that is requested at this time.
If you would like to request a holdover, do you have an idea of when the site plan and the additional information can be provided?
I can provide the information today, right now. That wouldn't be a problem.
I think we need this in writing.
We
Submitted.
Okay, that's no problem.
Yeah.
We do. If you could submit it within the next 2 weeks, it could be up at the commission's meeting, the second meeting in April, which will be the April 21st meeting.
Okay.
Ms. Porter, are you in agreement with that?
I don't have a choice, do I?
Any further questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, thank you, Ms. Porter. Seeing it is an agenda item, I'll ask if there's anyone else here to speak on this agenda item, either in favor of or in opposition to. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you.
Again, under group applications, agenda item 10, 2100 North University Boulevard, the locale subdivision recommended for tentative approval, subject to 10 conditions, and a rezone recommended for approval with the 2 reasons stated and 2 conditions to be followed. Is the applicant present? Are we good with the conditions on the subdivision? Are we good with the reasoning and conditions for the approval of the rezone recommendation? Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of 2100 North University Boulevard? Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to the agenda item? Moving on to number 11, again under group applications. We have 6288, 62, then 88, then 100 and 116 Hillcrest Road. Hillcrest Cedar Bend subdivision recommended for tentative approval with 9 conditions and a recommendation for rezone with approval with 1 reason stated and 2 conditions. Is the applicant present? You in agreement with the subdivision conditions? And you're good with the approval and conditions for the rezone? Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of Hillcrest Cedar Bend subdivision on Hillcrest Road? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to that subdivision or rezone? At this time, we'll close the public hearing session and commissioners will move on to the deliberation. Moving back to agenda item number 1, under holdovers, 254 and 256 State Street. Staff had comments on number 1 from 25 to 50, as well as 8N on removal or deletion of that note. Any comments or questions from commissioners?
We were eliminating note number 1, weren't we?
That's correct.
Excuse me, elimination of 1 and elimination of 8N.
Elimination of number 1, modification of 8N as in Nancy to delete from lot 1-none to city engineer.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 2, 355 North Ann Street, recommended for approval with findings of fact and 7 conditions. Applicant was present and in agreement. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve adopting findings of facts A and B.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 3, 4119, 4161, 4173, and 4175 Halls Mill Road, recommended for tentative approval with 7 conditions. The applicant was present and in agreement.
Move to approve subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Let me back up. That's the subdivision.
That's the subdivision. Yeah.
That's recommended for approval. The subdivision, recommended for tentative approval with 7 conditions. Been acted on as a motion on the floor. Need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to the subdivision? Subdivision passes. 3B, rezone I-1 light industry.
I'd move to approve subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. New subdivision application at 2600 Fairway Drive, recommended for tentative approval with 9 conditions. The applicant was present and in agreement.
Move to approve subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5, north side of Abigail Drive at its east terminus in the Rangeline Business Park subdivision, recommended for tentative approval with 10 conditions. The applicant was present, and there was a note on number 4 under the conditions
To delete it,
to
please.
delete number 4.
Move to approve subject to staff recommendations, deleting item number 4.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 6, 1017 Smith Avenue, subdivision of the Reed Estate subdivision. Staff recommended for tentative approval, 7 conditions. The applicant was present and in agreement.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. New planned unit development applications, PUD, 186 Stanton Road. A reminder that Ms. Sessions has recused.
I have a question of the staff. What requirements do we have for the number of dumpsters on a site like this? I mean, some of these people have to walk 150 yards, 200 yards to get to a dumpster.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an engineering department requirement, or?
There are no minimum dimensional standards for a dumpster. The only standards in the zoning ordinance are the enclosure and the sanitary sewer.
Reminding the commissioners, we had a submitted document at our places as well as opposition statement, but we also had applicant addressing those concerns.
Mr. Chairman, we need to get discussion on this, don't we? I guess we need a motion to bring it to discussion.
I don't know what motion we could make about owls. You know, great horned owls aren't endangered. No, great horned owls are not an endangered species, but you know, they said they were willing to do something about owls. I mean, I would just take them at their word, so we don't have to create a motion regarding owl preservation. That's so I would move to approve subject to staff recommendations with findings of fact. B, C, and D, at least so we can get to discussion.
Let me ask this question, because this,
Second.
okay,
Properly moved and seconded, open for discussion, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chairman. The one thing I guess that concerns me, everything else, I appreciate what the developer's doing to alleviate the concerns of the residents that surround that. There was one comment made, though, with regards to traffic on Stanton, that it already gets clogged up, and with even 44 units, you're talking probably 88 more cars on that. What is the impetus for a traffic study to be done?
Generally, it's 100 units. That's the minimum threshold for when we require an impact study for housing developments. So it was half of that threshold.
All right, so I think I see the problem. I mean, if they already have an issue and there's an increase of 88 cars, and if, you know, using the national transportation data, it's going to be, it will be an impact. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I get complaints on every week throughout numerous districts is traffic in this city, and we don't do a good job at it. I would like to know that before we're going to exacerbate a problem that already exists, that there is not a problem there. Is there a way that we could go ahead and do the traffic study and just ensure that that's not an issue before we go ahead and start this?
We could, but what is your expected outcome, I guess, is the answer.
Well, I want to need to know. I mean, we've had a resident that lives near there say that there is a problem with traffic.
I don't disagree.
So if there is a problem that exists and we're about to increase the problem, then I think that's something that we need to address to try and alleviate additional issues in that area.
Okay. And that's something that can be considered. If the majority of the traffic is going south towards Stanton, it might be improvements lengthening turn lanes down at Spring Hill and Stanton. Just recently, as of even just February, we've been working with the DOT to improve the signal progression on Schillinger, and we haven't seen the full turnout of that. It's still in its, I mean, it's a month old, the new signal timings that we have there. So we don't know what that added benefit is just yet. It could be looked at. It could be. But that I can't imagine it would be anything more than improvements at Stanton. It wouldn't necessarily justify turn lanes at this intersection or into the driveway here at the development, right or left.
I would recommend that a study be done so we can ascertain what the issues are that do need to be addressed, and if there aren't issues, then we're good. But I would rather head this off now than them run into problems in the future that's going to be even worse.
Just for everybody's understanding, and I appreciate understanding what you say or saying. been the commission's policy to only require one if the traffic department asks for one if it meets their minimum threshold. A study can cost $10,000 or $12,000, and I'm not sure what, like Mary Beth said, I'm not sure what could be done. I mean, they're not going to require a light at Oak Knoll. The size of the development is always what we look at in what the traffic department looks at in requiring one. And I'll just throw that out there that we've never required one when traffic doesn't say one's necessary because it hadn't met the minimum threshold.
I totally appreciate that, but I will tell you, we're not getting it right. We just aren't. And the proof is people driving home every day. So, you know, if we've got folks that are coming down saying there's a problem, then I think we owe it to them to validate that if there's going to be new developments on that road and identify what those are, and if there's a way to deal with it in advance, then I think we'd be much better off.
Question for staff. Is this section of Spring Hill, did I hear you correctly, is this in one of the sections that the signals are being interconnected and then going to be routed through AlDOT's transportation center?
Yes.
So the likelihood of the issue there now, I mean, it's realistically probably green time on Stanton on to Spring Hill, which would be able to be lengthened, you know.
Perhaps
like,
we're actually not
Yeah.
seeing that everywhere. Actually,
Right.
we're seeing longer times on Spring Hill than on the side streets or any of the roads we worked on.
But I mean, the issue is Stanton's backing up because it's not having a chance to clear out because there's so much traffic on there. So the only real resolve to that is more green time, which would in turn make more backup on Spring Hill. So I mean, it's kind of, yeah. And I think the challenge there is the only other thing you could do is extend the turn lane, and that's just going to have more people sitting still. So I mean, I understand the request, but it is kind of delicate, striking a balance to which, you know, the only thing that really corrects it's less people, and I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, so it's kind of a, you know, it's hard to strike the perfect balance there.
Well, that's may be rectified with the synchronized lights. That's fine. But, you know, what I've heard is we don't know. And I would rather be able to know knowing if we have a problem, we don't have a problem. And right now, I think the answer is I don't know. Is what I heard.
Reminder, Commissioners, we are recused of Ms. Sessions on this item. And also a reminder, we have a motion on the floor that's been properly moved and seconded.
Move for the vote.
It's been a call to vote. Any further comments? All in favor of agenda item number 7 for approval?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One, two, three, four. I'm just making sure we're at 6. The motion passes. Agenda item 8, sidewalk waiver application. Recommended for denial at Dockside Drive, 6480, 6485, and 6490. The applicant was present and comments were made. There's a motion on the floor to approve the sidewalk waiver. We do not have a second. Motion fails. Been recommended for Dockside Drive denial of the sidewalk waiver. Entertain another motion.
Move in accordance with staff recommendation to deny the waiver.
Second.
Motion to deny the sidewalk waiver at Dockside Drive has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 9, group applications, east side of North University Boulevard at Lebaron Drive South. We'll take these separately. Well, no, excuse me. Yeah, we will take these separately.
This one had requested for holdover to.
Is it? My notes were scratched out. I apologize.
Yes.
So based on the comments, we did have a tentative approval on the subdivision, but we need more information on the rezone. So it's been recommended for holdover until the April 21st meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Holdover till April 21 on agenda item 9. Number 10, 2100 North University Boulevard. We will take these separately. Subdivision recommended for tentative approval with 10 conditions. Recommended, and applicant was present and in agreement.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. 10B, rezone, recommended for approval.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendations.
Properly moved and seconded.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question on this one.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
What is this going to be? What type of business? Do we know?
It is proposed to be an event center.
Okay. It's surrounded by R1, and we made a recommendation to deny the previous one.
No, sir, the north side's zoned B1, adjoining it, and it already has planning approval for a school and a large church.
Okay. I was looking at a different section on notes there. So. Just, yeah, I was looking at it surrounded by single-family residence. Okay, I'm good, thanks.
Properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for rezone is recommended for approval. Number 11, 62, 88, 100, and 116 Hillcrest Road. We'll take these separately as well. Subdivision of Hillcrest Cedar Bend, recommended for tentative approval with 9 conditions. The applicant was present and in agreement.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. The recommendation for rezone is recommended for approval.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for rezone passes. This concludes the agenda items for the March 17th St. Patrick's Day extravaganza. Just can't see it, Mr. Anderson. Any further items from staff? Adjourned.